Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Buzz for Good, where we talk all things nonprofit, the people they serve and the good they do. And today I am buzzing about beds, specifically a nonprofit founded in Idaho that builds and provides free beds for low-income children. Sleep in heavenly peace. I wasn't aware how much need there is out there for children's beds, but over its 15 years, Sleep in Heavenly Peace has built and delivered nearly 400,000 of them. And so on today's show, I share with you my conversation with founder Luke Mickelson, who started Sleep in Heavenly Peace in 2012 in his garage. Today, Sleep in Heavenly Peace is a $25 million operation with more than 400 chapters throughout the United States and world, including here in Roanoke, Virginia. Yes, I was buzzing to connect with him this week because of his nonprofit's mission, but what he didn't realize until our chat was the impact that his inspiring personal story had on my work creating Buzz for Good. Speaking of Buzz for Good, my name is Michael Hemphill. I'm the creator and host of the TV show Buzz that airs every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. on Blue Ridge PBS, where we feature the great work of nonprofit organizations and the marketing professionals affiliated with the American Advertising Federation of Roanoke who donate their time and talent helping these nonprofits achieve more buzz. I am currently working on 2 new episodes here in Virginia starring On Our Own of the Roanoke Valley, which is a drop-in facility for people struggling with addiction and mental health issues, and Southwest Virginia Wildlife Center. I'm also working on 4 new episodes starring nonprofits in my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama that will air starting May 14th on Alabama Public Television. And you can find out all about my work on my website, buzzforgood.com. That's buzz, B-U-Z-Z, 4, good.com, as well as my social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok, all at Buzz for Good. And now, here is me fanboying to start my conversation with today's Buzz for Good guest, Luke Mickelson. Truly is an honor. You're a bit of a legend to me. Back in 2019, I was creating a pilot episode of my TV show called Buzz, which features nonprofit organizations here in what started out in Southwest Virginia, and it's now I've expanded to my home state of Alabama.
Cool.
And as I was, creating the pilot, I suddenly up on Facebook popped this show called Returning the Favor by Mike Rowe. And the very first episode that I saw was where he and his crew roll into Twin Falls, Idaho, and do a show on you.
That's awesome.
And it was like, and it's like, wait, I'm trying to do that. But of course, I don't have Facebook money to pay for the multiple cameras and the beautiful production value that they did on that. But I was just, I watched it again this morning because I hadn't seen it in 7 years.
Right.
Again,
Jeez.
just the tears.
Yeah.
What a great.
It's interesting. It's Mike Rowe, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
Who doesn't love Mike Rowe? And the funny thing is, we've built and delivered 350,000 beds now, right? By the time Mike showed up, we had maybe built and delivered 3,000 beds. Just so why that's interesting is because there's a lot of homes that we go into that they don't look as bad as the situation really is, right? Maybe they just got a brand new apartment that the government's assisting them and it looks really nice, and sometimes it's even nicer than the room that you're staying at, But for the most part, right, there are situations just like that TV show showed, or that episode showed.
Oh, man.
And I'm glad Mike got to see that, right?
Yeah.
Because then you actually see his reaction too. And that's the reaction most people that I've been with have. You walk into this room and you're like, what?
Well, first of all, it's like you walk into this house, and then it was like down the basement. It was an unfinished room. There's no drywall on the walls. It's just you see the studs. And there are a couple of mattresses on the concrete floor where the kids are sleeping.
Yeah.
And then y'all get in there and you build a bunk bed for the kids and a single bed for mom. And it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah,
So yeah.
it was really, it's just lucky, I guess, in a way. And I guess they did a little bit of vetting beforehand, but, and we actually had another delivery that we were going to take Mike on as well, that he actually went back, what I now know, to the warehouse as they were fixing it up. And we went on to the next delivery and delivered another bed. And it wasn't, I mean, it was all of them are hardship situations, right? But aesthetically and visually, it wasn't near as, storytelling as the first one. And so it just, all the stars aligned and
Yeah.
it just worked out well.
Beautiful episode. So, I mean, the show has been discontinued, or it's
Yeah,
no longer there are no new episodes.
right.
But you can still on Facebook go to Returning the Favor and
Oh
then
yeah.
find Mike Rowe's episode on Sleep in Heavenly Peace. It is
Yeah.
remains just a powerful episode. But I want to rewind in time because you founded the organization in 2012.
Mhm. Yep.
What what was going on in your life that made you do that?
It's a great question. Well, at the time, I was about 35. And the funny
Mhm.
thing is, if I can rewind even a little bit further,
Sure.
I'm from a small town, and this is actually where we founded it. It didn't get technically found in Twin Falls, but there's a small town next to it called Kimberly,
Hmm.
which is where I was from. And being part of a small town, Michael, you just inherently worry about people and support people because they know you, you know them, you know
Right.
their parents and their brothers and their dogs, and I mean, you just know everybody.
Now, when you
There
say
wasn't
small town, can you put
about
that?
4,000 people.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
There wasn't a kid ages or grades 9 through 12 that I didn't know their name. I didn't know,
Mhm.
we just knew everybody because there was
Right.
only, I mean, I graduated with 70 people. It wasn't a huge class. And so, and I'd like to think that's kind of one of the characters that I picked up, or traits, if you will, that I picked up, was just wanting to support people. I loved working with people. I was on team events, and I loved doing stuff with a team. And in fact, later on in life, being a guy from Idaho that loves hunting and fishing and doing all that stuff, I never did it alone. I just didn't like it. I liked being with people,
Yeah.
and I obviously went into a career of sales, which probably doesn't shock people. And so, I just loved it. And
Yeah.
when I served a mission for my church,
What what
my
what
mission.
what were you selling? Just out of
Oh, I
curiosity.
was in industrial water treatment. So
Okay.
my parents divorced when I was really young, and then when I went and served a mission for my church, my mom had met another man, married him, and he owned a water treatment company. So when I
Hmm.
came back, I started working for them, getting ready for college, and then he offered me a position, and me and my brothers were going to buy the company, and so I was there for about 20 years.
Wow.
And then, so it was a good job. It was a good job. I was making good money, but 2012 rolled around, and it was even a little bit before that. And, but I think when you're at this age, I don't know, for me anyways, people call it a midlife crisis. I don't know. I think for me, I just started to realize, or at least question, what is most important to me.
Hmm.
I've got 3 kids now. I'm making good money. I'm coaching football. I'm in my church doing my service. But to me, I was like, I feel like I have more to offer, and I feel like I'm missing out on something. On paper, I kind of felt bad because on paper I looked great. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with my
Lot
life. In
lot
fact,
lot of boxes checked.
a lot of boxes checked, and
Yeah.
most people would have died to have half those boxes
Hmm.
checked, and I knew that. I just didn't value success the way I used to.
Hmm.
It didn't matter how many cars or toys or crap like that I had. In fact, quite frankly, they started becoming more of a burden than anything. And I'm like, okay, well then what is really valuable? What is my purpose? What do I believe? I was going through a huge faith crisis as well. Well, in the middle of this turmoil, no one knew about. I was just trying to suffer myself. I was serving in my church in a position called the Young Men's President. And what that is, I was a coach. I worked with youth, so it wasn't a shocker that they wanted me to serve in this position. I took the boys ages 12 to 17, right? I was responsible for, what the things that they got taught in church. But during the week, it was the activities that I was mostly focused in on. And the activity arm was Boy Scouts at the time. So I was kind of like the leader of the Boy Scouts, right? So, in this position. there were meetings every other week that we met with other auxiliary leaders in the church, and we talk about, what's going on, what events are happening in the community, the people we were helping within the community and in our church. Well, one lady was talking about a family in the town, in our small town, that needed help, and well, then she started talking about things that she knows the family needs. She paid a visit to them.
Okay.
Well, the mom was the local school bus driver. Dad, kind of suffered from some mental health issues. They were just really struggling financially. They needed rides to school. The kids didn't have any beds. They needed help with rent and help with food. And I remember thinking, whoa, whoa, wait a minute, wait a minute. Did you just say the kids didn't have any beds? And she said,
Mm.
yeah. And I'm like, well, I mean, they're sleeping on mattresses, right? Just on the floor or something? She says, no, no, they're just blankets, pillows on the hardwood floor. And Michael, that
Mm.
just hit me. It just, I don't know if it was because of the things that were going on with me personally,
Hmm.
thinking about my kids, thinking about dad trying to be the better dad, and then this hits, and I just thought of my kids, and then I thought, you know what? And every leader knows what I mean when you say finding an activity nowadays, even 10 years ago, right, that doesn't involve a screen or a computer game or a TV to keep youth active and excited. Is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I thought, here's a great opportunity for me to get an Xbox controller out of these boys' hands and put a drill in it, right? And teach them something, that they need to learn the joys of giving back, how to use power tools, I loved doing that. I'd never built furniture before, but I'm a farm kid. I can figure it out. And so that's what we did. I went home that night and measured my daughter's bunk bed and got it all put together, and then went and bought the wood and materials. I had to borrow some of my wife's tools. Don't tell anybody. But the boys came over that Wednesday night, and they were there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night. For a couple of hours, we were building this bunk bed. And the cool thing is, we just had such a great time.
Hmm.
I wanted these boys to feel the joy of service, what it feels like to have fulfillment, to stop thinking about themselves. Because I always told them, listen, if you want true happiness, you got to stop thinking about yourself and think about someone else.
Hmm.
Now, your problems, they don't go away. Of course not, right? But what they do is they put you in a different perspective, that where now you can look at your problems maybe differently.
I preach this all the time. People who, serve at a nonprofit end up being the ones who get served the most.
Oh yeah, for
And,
sure.
and so even from the beginning, though, you already had that figured out. And so this wasn't a ministry that you were just trying to help others who you were serving, but really you were also helping those who were doing the serving themselves.
Well, you're exactly right. And the funny thing is, when we were all said and done, the word kind of got out in the community about, this project. And it was just a cool project. I mean,
Yeah.
I can think of, if I was a parent and I learned my kid was building a bed for a child, I'd want to see what's going on. That's kind of cool, right? And so we came to deliver the bed on Saturday. Like 30 people showed up. And I was like, listen, we can't send an army of people over to this two-bedroom,
Yeah.
small apartment.
Yeah. It
So
takes
I
two people
stayed.
to actually carry the bed inside,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
exactly. It's
like
like
28
government
others.
work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of managers.
That's right.
No, so I stayed back with some leaders, and the boys and some of their parents and friends went, and I wanted them to have the experience, right?
Mm.
And so, and of course, the next day at church, they just told me how amazing it was. The kids were so excited. That they told me, well, I didn't know, Brother Mickelson, that these, this is what these kids were sleeping on, and it would just warmed my heart that what I was hoping was going to happen happened,
Yeah.
But personally, it filled my bucket immediately. It just
Mm.
filled whatever hole that was developed in there. I mean, I felt a little jealous I didn't get to go on the delivery, but mission accomplished. Well, it's funny, the next week comes around and how life just creeps back in. The next thing you know, you're back in the rut, and it was almost worse now because I had just experienced this, right?
Yeah.
It's like a reminder of I got a breath of life and now I'm choking again,
You had glimpsed paradise, but you were
correct.
back in, yeah,
Back in the trenches, and
right.
and I hated it. So I'm sitting on the couch and we were watching Big Bang Theory with my kids. It was kind of just our night ritual. Well, a commercial came on or something popped up. Well, my kids wanted, it was around Christmas time. This is after Thanksgiving. And it was some Xbox game or controller or something. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, don't you dare Ask for this. Every parent goes through this, right? And of course they're kids, so they're going to ask. And sure enough, they did. And so it just hit me right. Struggling, going through this. I just did this. It was awesome. Now I'm back in the rut. Now my kids want beds. They've got beds. They want an Xbox. They don't, I mean, all of this mumbo jumbos just going through my brain. And I remember, I don't even remember standing up, but the next thing I knew, I stood up. I started walking to the garage. I wasn't upset or anything. I just started doing it. And my kids were like, Dad, where are you going? Big Bang's on. And I said, you know what? I got leftover wood. I'm going to build another bunk bed and you're going to come and help me. you know, because I
Nice.
instantly thought of, you know what? I can sit here and teach my kids, talk to them, share videos, share testimonies, share pictures all day long. But until they're in it, right? Until they actually participate, I don't think they get the same lesson. And I thought of my Boy Scouts who, just the week before that had no idea that children sleep on the floor.
Mm.
I mean, I didn't either, but they got to see and solve that problem. I wanted my kids to feel the joy of service. To, I mean, granted, they were still pretty young, but I mean, there's never not a good time to teach them that, right?
Yeah.
And so we built this bed, had a great time. I mean, I got pictures of my daughter in a pink tutu hammering away, and my son in his favorite Boise State jersey, drilling wood together. We just had a great time. Well, the funny thing is, and to your point, I didn't build this bed because I knew another child was on the floor. I mean, we had solved the problem, right?
Yeah.
There was, as far as I knew, that was it. It was more for my kids. And these are the tiny moments I think I share and talk about that people often miss that can change worlds. I tell people, listen, your tiny moment, it might not change the world, but it's going to change someone's world. And you know what? That someone might just be you. And that's
Hmm.
perfect. And that's what I
Hmm.
wanted for my kids. But then we're all done and I got this bunk bed in my garage, not knowing what to do with it. So a friend of mine mentioned, why don't you put on this thing called buy, sell, trade on Facebook? And,
Yeah.
this is 14 years ago. I had no idea what that meant. So I was like, sure, whatever. Two things happened that were really shocking. The first one was is how many people posted on this or commented on this post. I mean, people I'd never met before, friends I hadn't seen for 20 years, just out of the
Mm.
blue were commenting on this, which I think was really cool. Um, but the second thing is the most shocking thing was they all knew kids or situations that families had kids sleeping on the floor. And then they shared it with me. It was like house fire. So this family has nothing. They're living in a passenger van right now.
Yeah.
Kids are sleeping 3 or 4 to a bed, sleeping on concrete, sleeping on pallets for crying out loud. And I just remember thinking, holy cow, like what is in my hometown, this is going on? It was really shocking. Then I get a phone call from a friend of mine, and she said, hey, Luke, have you delivered that bed yet? I said, no, why? What's going on? She says, well, let me tell you a story. She worked in the social services sector and helped people with all sorts of stuff.
Mhm.
Well, she helped this family get a house, and this is Haley's story. So Haley's a 6-year-old girl that had never slept on a bed before. She'd only slept in the backseat of her mom's car. They were homeless. Um, and I'd heard, you hear stories like that, but to witness it is a whole different level. And so I
Mhm.
got pretty excited. We're going to deliver this bed to little Haley. She didn't know it, what we were doing, but we loaded up the bed, drove out to her house, and and walked in the house. Now I've been a part of homelessness, transitioning, foster care. I've been a part of these before through my church history and service for many years. But it was probably the first time, not probably, it was the first time I walked into a situation like this, looking at through the eyes of a 6-year-old. What does a
Mm.
6-year-old see? What are they missing? Because that's who we were there to serve. And when you do that, you realize because there was nothing in the house, you realize there's no couch or TV to watch cartoons. What does she do Saturday morning? There's no table to eat cereal on. Does she just sit on the floor? Because the only thing in the house was a hot plate that had a can of soup on it. That was it.
Mm.
But Haley, you couldn't tell. She was so excited, right? This little 6-year-old girl. She had a house for crying out loud. And I leaned down and said, Haley, why don't you show me your bedroom? Right. So she walked us back to her room, and you can imagine what that looked like. Holes in the carpet and tears on the wallpaper and no closet door and used toys everywhere. But of all the things The most shocking sight was what I saw in the corner, and there was a pile of clothes there, and that's where Haley slept.
Mm.
So she'd come home from school, she'd put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes, shirt for pillow, pants for blanket, and the next morning put that same shirt and pants on and go to school.
Mm.
And I I think at first I got mad. You know, Frustrating is probably the right word, right?
Right.
This is going on in my own hometown. I mean,
Yeah.
I just was like, you got to be kidding me.
Mm.
And it didn't help that I knew this was a single mom, and I was raised by a single mom too,
Mm.
right? When my parents divorced, we knew there was five of us, five kids, and a single mom with three incomes, right? Or three jobs. I knew we weren't going to get much for Christmas, but in fact, there was one Christmas I went out to the mailbox to get the letters and stuff, and in it was an envelope that had $1,500 cash. And that's the community we lived in.
Mm.
That's where I say, you're taught. You don't realize it then, but you realize it now when you're an old fart that, this is what you learned, right? This was embedded in you. And I remember thinking back then, man, someone could, so they did, and when I can, I will.
Mhm.
And I've always kind of had that mentality. And so when I saw Haley's room, it instantly turned to excitement,
Yeah.
because we had this bed for her.
Mhm.
So we started bringing in pieces of the bed, and me and my buddy started putting it together. And I was kind of watching Haley. I wanted to see her reaction when she realized that all this wood that we're putting together is actually her bunk bed. Well, she erupted. I mean, it was the coolest thing. She
Mhm.
came over. Geez. She came over and hugged me and my friend Jordan, two strange dudes she'd never met before, making all sorts of racket in her room. And then she did something I never saw before. I've never heard before. She went and hugged and kissed the bed, right? And
Mm.
I know that seems very simple, but when you're sitting in the middle of this room and the last 6 years are going through your brain of where this child has slept, and you bring her something as simple and as common as a bed that we all know,
Mm.
she's so excited she kissed it like it was her parents. And then if that wasn't enough to just melt your heart, I looked up and here's mom. I mean, I did not plan for this. I don't know how you could. But there's mom, 6 years of tears just pouring down this
Mm.
lady's face, and
Mhm.
and being raised by a single mom, I knew what those tears meant. I knew every
Right.
single drop, the frustration, the worry, the guilt that they felt, for not providing and doing the best she can. All of that now is being taken care of by a simple bed.
Well, that's my next question. First, let me take a moment. You've been on a tear, and I love it. But let me just reintroduce you to people who are just tuning into the show here at Buzz for Good. I'm joined by Luke Mickelson, who is the founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, founded and based in Idaho, his home state, but now with chapters throughout the United States and even around the world, whose sole mission is to provide free beds for kids. What does a bed mean to you?
Hmm. You know, um, just pause for a second. Give me 60 seconds. That's all I ask, right? And I want you to stop and think, what would it be like to be a 6-year-old or even yourself, right?
Mhm.
And don't have a bed day in and day out, right? I think of little Haley. She woke up like millions of kids nowadays wake up without a bed. They're sore and stiff, right? They're sleeping on hardwood floors. Maybe not as sore and stiff as you and I would be, but they're sore and stiff, and they're certainly not ready to go to school and learn. You know, Most teachers can pinpoint with pretty good accuracy the kids that struggle or not sleeping well because they're tired in class. They don't learn, their grades suffer. They don't make great friends because they're irritable and moody, like you and I would. I mean, they call it waking up on the wrong side of the bed for a reason, right? These
Mm,
kids are waking up on the wrong side of whatever, you
right.
know? And that's just the physical side of things. Now, when you think about the mental side of things, and I'm speaking more just for kids right now, they can't have sleepovers. They can't
Mm.
have friends come to their room. I mean, they can, but they don't, and they won't. The parents are embarrassed, the kid's embarrassed. So they go over to their friend's little Johnny's house, and Johnny not only has a bed, he's got freaking throw pillows, right? What kind of message do these kids see and hear and think? And worse yet, and this affects all of us. Michael, when you and I have a bad day, job sucks, lost a client, boss yelled at me, whatever, right? Or worse yet, you got the flu. I mean,
Mhm.
tell me, anybody out there, I will argue, the one place on the planet we all can't wait to crawl into
Yeah.
and escape and recharge and heal is our bed, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these kids
That's
don't
what
have that.
what good friend growing up, he always would say jokingly, but every day is just one long journey back to the bed.
I love that. I don't know about you, but I've spoken keynote speeches and all that
Yeah.
all across the country and the world. I have yet slept in a bed that I'd rather sleep in than my own, right?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with comfort. I mean, there's been some comfortable beds,
Yeah.
but when you get right down to it, I'd just rather be in my own bed, which
Yeah.
shows you it's about stability. It's about
Hmm.
safety,
Hmm.
security,
Yeah.
reassurance, familiarity, whatever you want to call it. These kids don't have that,
Hmm.
right? It's certainly not to the level that they would if they had a bed.
Hmm.
So to answer your question, yeah, a bed is far more than just a good night's sleep, right?
Yeah.
It brings dignity, it brings friendship, it brings better moods, it brings better grades, which obviously are better opportunities for these kids. I had a chapter president in Idaho. A long time ago, we started kind of expanding a little bit. Well, we had a chapter start in Rexburg, Idaho, and the chapter president actually served as a prison guard at a juvenile detention center, right? And part of his role of that, I don't know if he was a counselor or what, but he'd sit in these group sessions with these kids, right? And I don't know how many were there. And granted, this is just Rexburg, Idaho, but it's probably a good representation of the situations that most of these kids are in. And he sat down when he became a chapter president. He said, Luke, I sat these kids down and I was just curious how many kids in that little circle, and I don't know how many were there, 10 or 20. He says, I asked him who grew up without a bed. And he told me it was over 85%. I mean, if
Wow.
you think about that, now there's a lot of things that go that cause that, right? But is it really a hard stretch to think about a kid that young, real young, Haley's age, 6, 7, 8 years old, not sleeping well, waking up in a bad mood, not getting good grades, getting hollered at, of course, their situation's not going to be near as potentially successful or the same opportunities as little Joey over here that does get a
Mhm.
good night's sleep, right? That does have friends come over and mingle and, feels like he's supported and loved. So it's not a far stretch to think that even a bed can affect the to that level a child and a young adult's
Yeah.
life moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, join here on Bus for Good by Luke Mickelson, the founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And so you started it in 2012. Uh, at what point did you decide to go all in, say goodbye to the day job, and this
Yeah.
is what you were going to do?
You know, um, that's a great question. When we got home from Haley's house, I was determined to just build as many beds as I could. Number one, I had a Facebook post that had a lot of names on it,
Yeah.
right? So I want to at least take care of those people and
Hmm.
those kids. But the problem is the more we built, the more we shared with everybody what we were doing, the more kids we found, the more kids we were told about, the more people wanted to help. I remember even looking at my wife at the time and said, I think we're onto something here. Like, I think something's not right. Like,
Hmm.
I had no idea, and I think I'm a pretty active member of my community, and I had no idea this is going on, right? That this is a real thing. And so we just started building as many beds as we could. And the cool thing is through the years, as we built more beds, more people found out, more people helped. And then we started getting calls from people, mostly friends at first. Hey, one was in San Diego, California. Hey, can we do this down here? I'm like, heck
Hmm.
yeah, we can, right? We had now become a charity. And so we set them up as a chapter of our charity. We had one in Boise, we had one in Twin Falls. And then we got message from people that we didn't know that were clear across the country in Maryland, in Minnesota. And we set them up as chapters. And then, of course, in 2018, that's when Returning the Favor showed up. We were viewed by 10 million people.
Yeah.
And the best thing that Mike Rowe and that show gave us wasn't necessarily the warehouse. It was the megaphone that we needed to announce this problem that no
Hmm.
one knows about
Hmm.
to the world.
Yeah.
And because of that, now we've trained over 440 chapters in every state. We're almost active in every state in 4 countries. And this summer, here shortly, we will have built our 400,000th bed.
Spectacular. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's well, one of those chapters, which is how I first heard about you. I mean, I heard about you from the Micro show, but then I'd forgotten about you. And then somewhere, through the years, I heard here in Roanoke, Virginia, where I'm based,
Oh yeah.
that there was this group doing Sleep in Heavenly Peace, and I'd forgotten that it was a national organization. I thought that it was, just a group of local folks who were just doing this good work. Well, I love, so if you go to Sleep in Heavenly Peace's website, what pops up is not all about sleep and heavenly peace, but it's directing you right to what your local chapter is doing, which is brilliant marketing, by the
Oh,
way.
well, we learned a long time ago. Listen, when I found out child bedlessness was as big and bad and ugly as it is,
Yeah.
not just in my town, but everywhere, right? I knew this problem was not going to be solved by some farm kid from Idaho, right? We're not going to
Yeah.
build enough beds here in Twin Falls. I knew we had to create a platform where other people could
Hmm.
follow because this
Hmm.
problem needs to be solved locally. So
Yeah.
we did that. Yes, we always knew we're a national organization, but where the rubber meets the road is locally.
Yeah.
And so just
It,
it was only about 3 years ago we actually made that switch to because we wanted people when you go to shpbeds.org,
mhm.
we don't, I mean, big numbers, national numbers they give you an idea, right? At least hopefully sparks your curiosity to
Hmm.
go find what's going on in your town.
Yeah.
Well, this way we'll just show you right away,
Yeah. It
and you'll
feels
see.
like I think it feels like a local organization because
Perfect.
of that targeted and you've got to really dig deep to find anything about you on that
Mm,
website, which
yeah.
again, I mean, kudos to you for humbling yourself and for the cause.
It's it's again, this was never about one guy, right? In fact, I even think on Mike Rowe, I said this is way bigger than one guy or one town or even one state, even one country, right? Because I've
Yeah.
learned how big it was, and I think I think every founder starts out with that knowledge or that hope and that dream.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can get caught up in it, sure. Even chapter presidents can get caught up in the recognition because we all do it for a number of reasons, right? And like I mentioned earlier, you might not change the world, but you'll change someone's world, and that world might just be yours, and that's okay. You're not going to be very much help to anybody if you're not in a good headspace, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so if serving puts you in a headspace, you can call it selfish all you want, but now you're ready to serve, right?
Yeah.
That's my opinion. And so as I knew that this need was everywhere, we just wanted to provide the simplest process, the least amount of barriers to entry for anybody, like a farm kid from Idaho, can start a chapter and be successful at it. And now we train once a quarter. And I'm happy to say this next training in April is our biggest class we've had in like
Hmm.
7 years.
Wow.
We're really being more targeted on some of these areas we don't have chapters in. We know now what types and seasons of life chapter presidents are most successful in.
Well, yeah, I was
Not
going to ask
all.
you, I was going to like, what is the recruitment or the vetting process for someone? Let's say someone who's listening to the show says, "Oh, I
Mhm.
love what they're doing. I want to start a chapter in my neck of the woods." So,
XYZ.
so
Yeah.
what happens?
So there's on our website, shpbeds.org, there's a tab called Start a Chapter. So when you click on Start a Chapter, the first thing is going to pop up. You'll enter an email and name just so,
Mhm.
technically so we got you and know who we're talking with. And you'll just fill out an informational form, right? Well, you'll then get a phone call from our training manager, and she'll just kind of walk you through. So, you gotta understand, sometimes people click that button thinking that they're just requesting a chapter to come to them,
Sure.
or some of them are bed requests. They just didn't understand it. So she kind of weeds those out. And then once we find out, okay, this is it, then we send you a webinar. Now it's a pre-recorded webinar. I actually haven't seen it for years. It used to be me just, mumbling away. But we really wanted people to know and understand what it takes to be a chapter president, at least
Mhm.
the 30,000 foot view. And then if you're still wanting to do that, still want to move forward, then we send you the application. Now it's a 7-page document, which I don't want to scare anybody. It really, I mean, it doesn't matter how you fill it out. There's no right or wrong answers. The most important thing is really just trying to let the person know, listen, you manage groups. How are you with that? You're going to be talking on TV and radio. How are you with that? There is some technology that goes into this
Yeah.
reporting and stuff like that. How are you with that, right? And it's if you're terrible at it, that doesn't mean you're going to be a bad chapter president. It just means helping you realize you're going to probably have to find someone in your team or in your community to jump in and help. And then after all that's said and done, and you still want to move forward, then we invite you to the regional webinars, which there's what we call a chapter support lead, who then walks with you and other people that are interested in starting a chapter within their geographical area. And that's where you get to ask all the questions you want. It's really where you're talking to a live person and saying, what about this and what about that? And
Hmm.
how is this ran? Then after that, usually if people are still wanting to move forward, usually when they get to that point, they do. Then we fly them to Salt Lake City, Utah for a
Hmm.
weekend and we train them in there. And listen, we as the management, what we call the chapter support center, which is the headquarters, if you will, our main client is our chapters. We want nothing to we're main purpose is just to support the chapters because we know that's where the rubber meets the road. That's
Yeah.
where beds get made. And so we make it as simple and as easy as possible, right? All they do as chapter presidents is raise money, building beds, delivering beds. And the funny thing is, every single class that comes in that we treat or that we teach and train, their biggest fear is to raise money,
Raise money,
right?
of course. Yeah.
And I hesitate to say this because I want people to understand. Look, we're a charity. We operate off of donations. That's period.
Yeah.
But I tell people, listen, raising money for Sleep and Emily Peace will be the easiest thing you've ever
Hmm.
done.
Yeah.
It really is. All
Yeah.
you have to do is tell your story, right?
Yeah. I tell
Um,
people all the time. I mean, it's
yeah,
easy to ask for money when you believe in the cause. And
100%.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you have a great story to tell, which I mean, my
Yeah,
stars.
especially, and every nonprofit's important, right? But when you're presenting some pretty astonishing and unremarkable or remarkable rather stats that people don't, I mean, almost don't believe at first, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
child sleeping on the floor, this is how big it is. And in my own hometown, it's 3%. 100,000 people. You're telling me there's 3,000 kids sleeping on the floor in my town? Yes,
Yep.
yes, it's exactly what I'm telling you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's a shocker and not a hard thing to get behind. And then the delivery and the process of doing that, the volunteer experience for Sleep and Emily Peace is one that I learned a long time ago. And for all you nonprofits out there listening right now, this is a gold nugget I'm going to land at you, right? The volunteer experience to us is almost equally important as delivering a bed to a child.
Hmm.
Because if you volunteer experience isn't a good one, right? If you're not providing the fulfilling feelings that volunteers need to get when they come to one of your events, then you're going to stagnate or die as a nonprofit.
Hmm.
And your mission won't get fulfilled as much as you'd like,
Yep.
right? So, our volunteer experience, and the way to do that is not make it easy for them. I mean, you don't want to make it super complex. Building a bed with us is super, super easy, meaning you can't screw it up. We've taken all those follies out. But I mean, you're there for 4 hours, you're sanding, you're lifting wood. I mean, at the end of the day, and certainly the next day, you're going to feel it. It's kind of like a workout, right?
Hmm.
But like a workout, when you're the next day super sore because you worked out, you feel the most fulfilled. You feel like you actually did something. And that's what people do when they walk away from building and delivering beds for kids. They know they made an effort and they feel it, right? The volunteer experience does that for them. So that's how we've grown so much. That's why you have so
Hmm.
much dedication and not just because of the cause, which obviously is a big one, but is because it does fulfill and fill their buckets. You're talking to a guy that filled my bucket, saved my life in a lot of ways, right?
Hmm.
And that's meaningful. I do a lot of keynote speaking. It's about making passion purpose, right? We all want to have a
Yep.
purpose here on life. That's
Hmm.
what drives us. That's what keeps us alive and keeps us here and keeps us motivated and stuff like that. Passion can turn into purpose very easily, very quickly. And you want it to, right? And how do you do that? Well, parts of that is doing something, acting on your tiny moments and getting that satisfaction, that fulfillment that comes from helping others, right? That's what moves us.
Yeah.
And sleeping on the peace, I've heard it many, many, many times. People say that they come to a build or they certainly go on a delivery, and they'll say that was the funnest volunteer event I've ever been to.
Hmm.
Right? Wasn't the easiest, but it was. We have a saying. It's called the happiest volunteer is the sweatiest and the dustiest, and it's so true.
Well, coming to towards the end of our time here with Luke Mickelson, the founder of Sleep and Heavenly Peace. More than 400 chapters now throughout the United States as well as around the world, providing basically building and providing free beds for kids. It's an easy elevator pitch. You know,
Yeah.
you're just not
You know, what's
not real.
funny is our mission statement, it used to be our motto. Our
Mhm.
mission statement is no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. And the reason why we made it our mission statements rather than just our motto, and it's kind of interesting, a mission statement is typically the organization or company telling the public, this is what we do, this is
Right.
what we're about, right? Well, our mission statements,
And this is what we hope to accomplish rather
correct. Yeah.
than the vision of, we're
Yeah. This is
what we're
the
saying. Yeah.
This is the mission. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we're doing. Well, Sleep and Heavenly Peace mission statement's completely reversed.
Hmm.
It's no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. Well, our town would just be the organization. No, we want the public to say that
Yeah.
because this is a localized problem that can only be solved by local people.
Yeah.
So, people listening right now, this isn't a Luke Mickelson problem in your town. This is your problem, right?
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
say that as humbly as I can because it's the truth. I mean, we have provided a platform to solve this problem. What's interesting is I mentioned earlier that Care Portal was an organization that I found out that child beds were the most requested, if not the second most requested thing on in their organization. Well, I learned this a long time ago. When I decided to be a nonprofit, like any other entrepreneur, I thought, well, let me find another nonprofit that's doing this and see how they do it and stuff. So I scoured the internet. I found one nonprofit in the entire country in 2012, 13 that were providing beds for kids. That
Hmm.
was shocking. And the
Hmm.
second thing that happened is the more we delivered and built and shared and stuff like that, all of a sudden I was getting calls from social service workers, CASA, Child Protective Services, foster care. I was like their favorite guy,
Yeah.
you know. And I found out, they told me later, yeah, Luke, because in transitioning homelessness and these families in these situations, most of the time finding a bed for a child is the single hardest thing, which
Really?
blew me away. I'm like, really? Like more than a couch or a TV or air conditioning or I mean, rent?
Yeah.
Yeah, a bed for a child is the usually the single most hardest thing for them to find. And that right
Huh.
there sent me a message going, okay, there clearly is a problem here that no one is addressing. And the
Hmm.
reason why is because there was no organization that provided that, right? So they
Yeah.
were left going to every other organization to get whatever,
Hmm.
I call it the big three, food, clothing, shelter.
Yep.
Obviously, we got to hit those three first, right? And sometimes that's all that the people can handle. And
Hmm.
and beds, unfortunately, become a luxury, and they should never be a luxury,
Yeah.
you know.
Beautiful. Uh, for people who are tuning in and they're thinking about, okay, well, what's the thing that would fill my bucket that I also see as a need in the community,
Mhm.
and thinking about starting an organization or something like this. And I look at the growth of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, and even just the last 5 years. So I went to look at your 990s, and like in 2020, y'all had like $6.5 million in revenue. 2024, over $25 million
Yeah.
in revenue and like over $20 million in expenses as you expanded. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
surely you weren't envisioning that back in
Oh,
2012.
I
And
tell people,
so,
I get that question all the time. I'm
yeah,
like, who dreams that? I mean, yeah.
yeah, but so and kind of going back to the start of our conversation, you did not start. You started out this with a big heart,
Mhm.
right? But the brains that are involved with running any nonprofit, but then one that has seen such incredible growth.
Yeah.
Talk about just the transition for you personally, having to, I would imagine, have to let go of a lot of
Yeah.
responsibility to make something like this as sustainable as it's been.
You don't maybe realize how important that question really is.
Oh, I
I'll tell you
do.
this.
I do. Yeah.
Good. Even 2 years ago, I wouldn't have understood that question like I do
Mm.
now. And what I mean by that is, and we chatted a little bit about this beforehand, but when you're a founder of anything, a CEO of a for-profit company, maybe even just manager leader role that you're in your company and you start something, you build something, right? This is part of a scenario or a syndrome called founder's syndrome, right? And what this is when you create and build something, right? This is the first stage of founder syndrome. You're a builder, you figure it out, you see the need, you start working on it, you're putting the pieces together and forming this idea and then start implementing it, right? Well, when you start implementing it and it starts to grow and formulate and whatnot, you start moving into the second stage of founder syndrome. By the way, there's nothing wrong with it and there's no way to avoid it. So you just have to
Good to know.
realize you're going to get it, right? Anyways, well, the second stage, which I think is the most critical, both positive and I'll use the word negative, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Mhm.
And that's called identity fusion. So what happens? Luke Mickelson starts this bed building project. By the way, the first name was Beds for Babes. That lasted about 3 seconds. My wife at the time
Yeah, I
said,
was about to say,
"No,
dude,
no, it's not.
your wife came in and said, no, no,
No, no,
no.
that's not it." Anyways, so Sleeping on the Peace starts, right? Pretty soon, now you got the organization and the founder, and their identity becomes
Yeah,
one. I mean,
yeah,
even to this day, 99.9% of everybody that knows Sleep in Emily Peace or knows Luke Mickelson only knows me because of Sleeping on Peace. And there's very few that are opposite, right? They
right.
know Sleeping on Peace because they know me, right? Well, at the very beginning, that's not how it was.
Hmm.
You know, people only knew Sleeping on the Peace because of Luke Mickelson.
Yeah,
And now it's vice versa. So your identity becomes one, right? Pretty soon people start referring to this organization that you started as your baby.
yeah.
This is your dream. This was your passion. It's you got to remember, it's just a company. I mean, I don't
Now
want
it
to
is.
downplay it, but it's just a company. Yeah,
Yeah,
but back then, boy, it was your
right.
identity.
Yeah.
So that identity becomes so strong. Now, the sad thing, this is the negative part of it, but it's a very when you look at it, it feels negative, but it's actually the most positive thing. Well, as an organization evolves and grows, the founder does as well. But the
Mhm.
organization is not a human being. It has no emotion to it, and it's just going to grow and evolve. And the founder will grow and evolve in a different direction, or not even a direction, just a different way,
Mhm.
right? Well, that evolution, your board, the strengthening of the board and governance becomes stronger. You have to hire more people. There's more responsibilities get divvy out and released and more people get involved, more words, more just structure, just leadership structure happens, right? That's the evolution of the organization. Well, that starts to feel disconnected, right? As a
Mhm.
founder, it's actually diffusion of your identities, right? So if you've ever felt like you've had an identity, part of your identity literally pulled away from you,
Yeah.
how does that make you feel?
Hmm.
You know, this is now, there's every founder has a moment in their life cycle, their leadership cycle, where the I wasn't included moment,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Every founder, every CEO's had this.
Hmm.
And
Well,
no
because I
one
mean, you founded this in part. Not, I mean, this there was the need out there, but also there was
for
something within
myself.
you for yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So
that's why, because it
yeah,
becomes so personal, right?
yeah,
And a lot of founders, this maybe my sister, committed suicide. So I started a foundation because I mean, see how personal that connection
sure,
becomes.
yeah,
So when that diffusion, decentralization of these two entities start happening, I mean, the company doesn't care because it's not an it's not a human being.
right.
But here's the one dude or gal that founded this. No one knows what this feels like. No
Hmm.
one knows that this separation is happening. Even the founder doesn't understand. You can think through it, right? You can sit there and go, listen, like, I'm glad that someone else is making these decisions because that means my organization's growing and it doesn't need me anymore, which is awesome, awesome, awesome. But that feeling does not go away. It literally, I refer to it in my book as it's a monster. And now you move into the third phase, which is the most negative part and can be the most detrimental part to a founder. And that's what I call the relevance wound.
Hmm.
We all have wounds as a founder that we get because we question our relevancy with our organization anymore, which is profoundly personal and hurtful, and then the worst part about it, founders don't know how to react and don't know how to deal with. It's like going to the doctor with symptoms and your doctor going, well, I don't know what you got, right? You come home from that appointment frustrated as heck, right?
Hmm.
And almost even more mad. So the things that happen to you, you react very poorly.
Yeah.
Maybe the board comes down on you for the first time or says, "Hey, no, we're not doing that." And you're like, "Whoa, wait a minute.
This is my baby.
Excuse me. Yeah, this is my identity," is what he's
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
But what he's thinking is, this is my baby. So you have this protection that you instantly jump in, right? And because of that, now you look like you're defensive. You
Yeah.
look like you're arrogant. You look like you're, and you start reacting that way. You
Hmm.
don't want to. Trust me, I didn't want to either. But you start doing that. And it's simply, and again, in the back of your mind, well, I should say the front of your mind, you're so excited because you have a board and you have great people on the board and they're interested and they're growing the organization. Hurrah, hooray. But then you got this monster back behind you telling you, you feel these feelings and telling you things. And the sad thing about this monster, the reason why it's so believable and it's so hard to overcome, because it's you, it's your voice back here
Mm.
going, you're not as needed. You
Yeah.
don't have near as many responsibilities, so you're not as needed. You're
Hmm.
not as wanted anymore. I mean,
Right.
it is a horrible beast.
Hmm.
And this is founder syndrome. And this is what founders, board members, and executive teams, all this, they need to know that this actually happens. It's very similar to, I relate it to, if your spouse had cancer, right? She's going through something horrible, right? You don't feel what she feels. You don't get sick and the emotional swings and stuff like that. You deal with them
Yeah.
in a much different way.
You better be
And
aware of them. Yeah.
because you're aware of the situation, you can handle those things differently. You can
Yeah.
you can understand what she's going through and react differently. If you don't, which most boards, executive teams, even employees, they don't understand what this founder is going through. So all they see is defensiveness. All they see is
Hmm.
arrogance. All they see is I want control and blah blah blah, me me me. That's a hard thing for board members to understand, and that even the founder over here who's clueless on what's going on with himself or herself trying to deal with that, right?
Mm.
And then you move into, once you realize that and that you're experiencing these relevance wounds, the next step is to name the monster, right? Now you're going to go to the doctor and the doctor's actually going to give you um a diagnosis, right? And when you get that, think about when you come home from the doctor and you're like, okay, now I know why I'm sick. Now I know why I'm dealing with this. And now you can, what I call, face the monster, right? And when you do that, you can now shrink it down, right?
Hmm.
And deal with it. Now, here's the sad reality. And you're talking to a guy that still, we will forever deal with founder syndrome, right? It's something that won't go away. A little word here, a little comment here. Something happened to me just this week. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, founder syndrome just hit, and she kind of laughed. And so I teach people, look, once you name your monster, once you start shrinking and realizing what it
Hmm.
is, now you can get a hold of your own and control your own destiny. What happens is you go into a new role as a founder,
Hmm.
and to me, I put them in five categories. There's the builder, there's the architect, the anchor, the ambassador, and the last one is the mentor. But all of it is for the same goal, which is, now you're not building an organization anymore. That's built. You're not the architect anymore. You're not the builder. You're probably an ambassador and a mentor. Now you work on legacy,
Yeah.
right? Your legacy, and as the organization grows, and you can be proud of. And trust me, board members listening, founders listening, having the company and the founder still together makes the organization far stronger than if
Hmm.
they weren't. But
Yep.
the sad reality is, because of founder syndrome, some founders do not know how to react. And so they react poorly.
Hmm.
And ultimately, and this is a sad state, founders get kicked out of their own organization.
Well, and the organization suffers as well
100%.
because for a lot of people, still that the identity of the founder is coupled with the identity of the organization, and they are one and the same. So I don't want to end on
A negative.
a negative there. I
Well,
want to end,
it's really,
but yeah,
and I
I want to
appreciate
end.
that.
I want to end on applauding you for having been able to identify that and work through it, so much so that the organization that you have built is, I mean,
Mhm.
incredible that you have built, but now that it's going to keep on living
Yeah.
beyond you. So now it's like, okay, I've heard of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, or before this conversation, I'd heard of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. I wouldn't have known Luke Mickelson, you
Right.
know, right?
Right.
So,
That's, thank you for that. And that's the course I teach. I call it Founder Syndrome Survival Course because that's what you want.
yeah.
And you want your organization to grow and you want it to thrive, but you have a legacy behind that. And the beautiful thing is no one has the same legacy. And certainly for Sleeping Emily Peace, there's only one founder, right?
Hmm.
And so we can build on that legacy and you can enjoy those now later on roles,
Yeah.
leadership roles that you're taking on, rather than fight the ugly fight
Hmm.
that quite frankly you won't win.
Right.
You won't win, right? And that's the reality.
Hmm.
And thank you for saying. I've always looked at Sleep in Heavenly Peace as my baby, right?
Hmm.
As my passion and lifesaver, right? But there's other people that feel the same way.
Yeah.
And one of those people is a very good friend of mine, Jordan Allen. He actually started with me from almost the very beginning.
Hmm.
And he became the chairman of the board. And some of the reasons why I was able to make it through my relevance wounds and not react too poorly is because I had a friend of mine that knew me enough and helped me through it. But to come out on the other side, I want founders and board members to understand that this is a real thing,
Hmm.
but it can be overcome. And when you finally overcome it, only those who have been through it can maybe understand the relief, the release, the joy that now
Hmm.
comes back into your life
Yeah.
that your mission used to pump you full of, right?
Hmm.
Now you feel it coming back, and now you feel like, yeah, you're a different role, but it's a different role because the organization's much
Hmm.
larger. Sleeping
Hmm.
Heavenly Peace has saved my life, it's saved many people's lives, and that's something to be proud of, even outside of all the kids that we've helped.
Yeah. Well, I would argue, and I'll just kind of end with this, that, as many kids and families that you've helped through Sleep in Heavenly Peace, the work that you are now poised to do with helping founders and other nonprofits could potentially even be more impactful. The lessons that you have to impart with nonprofits are going to impact,
Sure.
there are 10 million nonprofits in this country,
Yep.
who do a variety of things, who many of them were had their own founder story,
Yeah.
and to help them thrive, which we as a country need for them to do in order to make our communities an even better place to live, are going to need the type of wisdom that you are and presentation that you're now offering
Mm.
through your courses. So thank you.
Oh, well, no, thank you. I feel that way. I
Yeah.
feel very passionate about it because the last thing, and I'll be honest with you, if I had not taken some time, a lot of humility, but taken some time and researched and worked on this personally, I have no doubt, and this is hard to say, but I have no doubt eventually I would have been dismissed as being a part of Sleeping Only Peace, which is
Mhm.
it's extremely painful to think about. And I don't want that to happen to anybody, and it doesn't have to be. And there's
Right.
actually a much brighter future for
Yeah.
founders that are looking for or in the middle of this transition. So, well, thanks for saying that. That means a lot, Michael. And I hope that anybody out there, aside from listen, we're here to talk about beds and kids, and that's
Yeah.
great. But any nonprofit out there or board member that knows and sees your executive director and your founder struggling with this, man, reach out. Go to my website for this is just lukemickelson.com.
Hmm.
I have an FSS course tab called Founder Syndrome Survival. You can read about it, and
Okay.
I have a little assessment on there that you can see maybe where you're fitting into your founder syndrome stage, and there's help out there. I can provide some guidance on that if you feel you need it. So
Wonderful. Well, again, Luke Mickelson, founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Thank you so much for coming on to Buzz for Good and being a Buzz for Good in all the places that you are impacting. So thank you so much.
thank you.
And that'll do it for today's Buzz for Good. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please stay connected with me throughout the week. on my website, buzzforgood.com, as well as my social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok, all at Buzz for Good. Until next time, please continue being a buzz for good in the community you hold dear and supporting those nonprofits that work tirelessly each and every day to make your community an even better place to live. Bye now.